Of course, we begin here with our big story. The nation's top Homeland Security official visiting the southern border. This as he faces a Republican-led impeachment effort over his handling of the migrant crisis. DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas today speaking at the busy border crossing of Eagle Pass, Texas, where the influxes of migrants have overwhelmed law enforcement agents. Take a listen.
The entire hemisphere is gripped with a level of migration that is unprecedented in recent history. We are dealing with fundamentally a broken immigration system and one that has been in dire need of repair for more than 3 decades.
Well, this as the migrant crisis grows at the southern border. Major cities and now smaller towns are feeling the pressure as more immigrants arrive by bus and by plane. On the East Coast, the buses from Texas and Louisiana have arrived at several train stations in Fanwood, Edison, and Trenton, New Jersey. And all of this is in an effort to avoid Mayor Eric Adams' new executive order that limits when buses can actually arrive at the Port Authority. And many of these smaller towns say they're simply not equipped to handle the influx of people. So joining us to discuss this is the mayor of Edison, Sam Joshi. So thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd like to get your reaction to what we heard there from Mayorkas today. He pushed back on the House Homeland Security's comments and their accusations that he's not enforcing the laws that have currently been passed by Congress. And instead, he pointed the finger right back at Congress, blaming them for this broken system. What's your take?
And I think it's the fault of both of them. I think that, look, Congress needs to take action. There's no question about it. I think that we are in a problem that is a federal and national issue that has now fallen squarely on the laps of mayors, and that is wholeheartedly unacceptable.
Well, also today, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy sent a letter to several charter bus companies transporting these migrants from Texas and Louisiana to some of these transit sites in New Jersey. I know you know that very well. But he's asking them to essentially give state officials some kind of advance notice of arrival. So have you spoken with Governor Murphy directly about your decision to turn these buses around?
I've not. I've been in touch with their administration. But bottom line is, at the end of the day, this is a federal issue. This is not something that should fall in the laps of mayors nor governors, quite frankly. Again, immigration itself at its core is a federal issue, has to be dealt with on a national level, and it's unacceptable that mayors are feeling the pressure of this.
And while we wait on Congress to make a decision, though, it is falling in the laps of Democratic mayors across this country. So in the interim, while you're dealing with this crisis as it unfolds right now, would a heads up like that from these bus companies, would your township then be able to gather resources to take care of these migrants, or would you be willing to?
So we don't have, as a mayor in a municipality with about 108,000 people, we simply do not have the resources financially, social service resources, or the school resources to address the needs of the migrants. It is simply not within our budget. It is not feasible. And I know that, having spoken to many of my colleagues and other mayors as well, they agree. It's just simply not a function of a local municipality. And that's really important for everyone to understand here, that we simply do not have those resources.
Well, the loudest voices in response to your comments and decision-making about turning these buses around and sending them back to the southern border have been critical. So who's supporting you right now? Who's supporting your stance on turning people away? And is that something you'll continue to do?
The answer is yes. And it's important I want to give you context. I'm the son of immigrants. The lion's share of my friends, family members, so many people within our township, about 45% of our community are either immigrants or first generation. And I can tell you this with confidence, that the overwhelming lion's share, supermajority of Edison Township residents agree wholeheartedly with my position. And I'm proud of the position that I've taken. And it's something that, like I said, has to be dealt with on a federal and a national level. This cannot fall on the laps of Edison residents or taxpayers, because my responsibility as a mayor ultimately is just to those residents and taxpayers.
I'm curious, have any other mayors reached out to you that have dealt with a similar issue and asked you what your response was like? Is it something that they might consider as well?
You know, I won't publicize the conversations that I've had with other mayors on television, but I will tell you that I have been in communication with neighboring municipalities across Middlesex County, across the state, and other areas as well. And I will be going to the United States Mayors Conference next week in Washington, D.C. as well.
And what do you plan to say there?
You know, it's similar to the position that I'm taking right now. It's not an issue for mayors to take on. It's something that exclusively has to be dealt with by the federal government, and the federal government, Congress, as well as administration, have to figure it out.
How much time do you feel like you and some of these other Democratic-run cities that are on the receiving end of these buses of migrants, I mean, how long can you hold out?
So that's a great question, and the answer is really coming down to at what point will we have to use resources? Like I said, Edison does not have the resources at all to expend financially for social services or for schools. And we've made it really clear that we simply cannot handle the needs of the migrants at all.
And what are you waiting on particularly from Congress? As the eyes really of the world right now are on Congress. You heard Alejandro Mayorkas to say this is not a uniquely United States problem, what we're dealing with at the border. He called it a regional problem. So first of all, is that a sentiment that you share? And then what are some of the changes that you hope to see in legislation from Congress?
I can tell you this as a mayor, that could be the truth, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, a federal issue has fallen on the laps of mayors. So for me to hear that now an international issue is falling on the laps of mayors, that's not something that I want to hear.
That's understandable. Mayor Sam Joshi, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. And I want to bring our big story to our panel here. So joining us today is ABC News' Jay O'Brien, who's in Washington, D.C., along with Alex Perche, who is following some Republican candidates all throughout Iowa, and ABC News contributor Maria Elena Salinas, one of the most recognized Hispanic journalists in the industry. We're so happy to have you with us. And so, Maria Elena, let's start here with you. One thing that the mayor said is he's being criticized not only for his stance, Maria, but he's being criticized for how he said it as well, by essentially saying that these migrants are not welcome here. And a lot of people are pointing the finger to him because he is the son of immigrants as well.
That's right. And I think one of the things that is clouding this debate is precisely the rhetoric. These immigrants or these migrants that are being bused into different cities around the country are referred to as undocumented immigrants or illegals, as they like to call them. But they are not. They are asylum seekers. They're already in the system, but they're still in sort of an immigration limbo. And, you know, if they're already in the country, that means that they were allowed to come in. And it's very difficult for them to be granted asylum in this country. You know, an individual to show credible evidence that they cannot return to their country, it takes a lot to be able to prove that. They have to prove that they were persecuted in the past. They have to have a well-founded fear that they're going to be persecuted in the future because of their race, their religion, their nationality, or because they're members of a particular social group or political opinion. That's very difficult to prove. So the problem is who gets to decide that. So at first instance, it's asylum officers and judges, but there's not enough judges to go around. And that's why the administration is asking for funds for more border control agents, more asylum officers, and more judges. And now they have to think of funds also for some of these Democratic municipalities that are at the receiving end of these migrants that are being sent in buses. But I mean, just the fact that all of these migrants are being sent to cities with Democratic mayors goes to show you that this is a political move. It's not that they're trying to send them out to different cities so that they can spread the burden around or spread the responsibility around the country. It's very specific, and that just really makes it a political ploy that is coming from the state from Governor Abbott in this case. So yes, the rhetoric I think is really bad. You have to consider that a lot of these people that are now living in the city in New Jersey probably were in the same boat in the past, and people can't forget about that.
Yeah, he did note that most of his, a large majority anyways, of his township is also made up of immigrants as well. But he went on to say that they're legal immigrants, and he totally supports legal immigration. And so, Jay, I want to take that to you. One point that Maria Elena brought up here is that some of these things like busing migrants and flying migrants, but then also these trips down to the border that we're seeing from Republicans, all of these things are labeled by some people as gimmicks as opposed to actually pushing forward legislation that would help fund border security. So where does all of that stand right now, Jay?
Well, I mean, you've got to kind of look at it from two different tracks. First and foremost, this is a Republican line of attack on President Biden that's frequently deployed. Republicans talking about the ongoing crisis at the border and trying to lay it at the president's feet. In the other track, as you and the mayor noted, there's ongoing discussions about immigration reform happening right now on Capitol Hill. Now, they're limited discussions. They would, if everything goes according to plan and the deal making is still being done, they would likely address the various requirements of those claiming asylum and make those requirements stricter and things of that nature. But those negotiations wouldn't reform the entire United States immigration system, which is something that the mayor was calling for.
And Alex, let's go to you. The migrant crisis, obviously a huge topic now on the Republican campaign trail. The debate is growing ahead of the Iowa caucuses just a week from today. It's almost hard to imagine. So how is this issue impacting the race there? What is the rhetoric like?
Well, Kana, we're smack dab in the middle of the country, but if you ask the average Iowan Republican, like, what are their voting issues, they'll tell you the economy, and most of them will tell you, or a lot of them will tell you, that immigration and the border is issue 2 for them. Actually, I was just reading a note from Rachel Scott, who's been following Governor DeSantis, and even today, as they're making their final pushes, now just a week out from the Iowa caucuses, the border is something front and center in DeSantis. In criticizing former President Trump, he says he couldn't negotiate funding for a border wall with Republican-led Congress. He did not negotiate his #1 promise as a candidate to rebuild the walls and have Mexico pay for it. That is something that is resonating with voters here. The issue of border security, as many of them have put forth. And so whenever you look at the politics of whether it's busing or flying migrants, that's playing out even at the national level.
It certainly is. Alex, Jay, and Maria Elena, our thanks to you as always.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.